So if you look in the Bible, it talks about Moses having difficulty speaking. And I recalled, I don't know if you ever saw the movie The King's Speech. It talks about how one of the kings in England also had difficulty speaking. And when I watched that movie, I learned something so long ago that Winston Churchill had problems speaking. And Felix Mendelssohn had difficulty speaking. And when you start to look at history, we see that it's not so unique that leaders or individuals have issues. Maybe it's speaking, maybe it's something else, maybe they were born a little bit different. In some form or fashion, if you really think about it, everybody has something. How exciting. In this week's portion, specifically, we learn about Moses' something in more detail. We learned that God spoke to Moses and said, Moses, as we just read in the Bible, go and tell Pharaoh to let my people go. And Moses says, brilliant idea, God, except one slight small problem. I have, this thing about my lips. He says that they are uncircumcised. What exactly does that mean? Well, it's not exactly clear. Rashi goes on to say uncircumcised means closed or stopped up. It wasn't fully open and available. Maybe that's the issue. If we look earlier in the parsha, not in this week's parsha, but in the book of Exodus, we read, "Oh Lord, I am not a man of words, not yesterday and not from the day before, not from the time you've spoken to your servant, for I am heavy of mouth and heavy of tongue." Why does it say heavy of mouth and heavy of tongue? Why does it need to be so specific? Rabbeinu Hanel in the Middle Ages said the very fact that Moses mentioned the fact that he had two different discrepancies or difficulties made it a clear indication that he had difficulty speaking or articulating specific words. He went on to argue that it was his teeth, that they couldn't get it past, and said that there were specific consonants. Now, I'm not sure, I'm not a speech pathologist, and I doubt that this medieval rabbi was, to be able to say it was these specific consonants that Moses couldn't say. But either way, when we look at this, it's obvious that there was something going on that made it difficult for Moses to speak. Nahum Sarna, a biblical scholar, in his commentary said that maybe this is a lesson for us to learn, which is kind of odd because you wouldn't expect a modern biblical scholar to decide that it's a lesson. Usually, in most other parts of his commentary, he's very analytic in describing what's going on in the text itself. Rather, in this case, he says, quote, "Maybe Moses felt inadequate." To this, God replies, with what in effect the essence of biblical prophecy. The chosen messenger conveys not only his own words, but the words of God. And he does so because he is irresistibly compelled by a force and a will more powerful than that of his own. Prophetic eloquence, then, is not a matter of native talent, but of revelation that derives from the supreme source of truth that is external to the speaker. The facile talker, the golden tongue, the consummate demagogue is not the recipient of the prophetic word or the vehicle of its transmission. Rather, prophetic eloquence is a divine gift bestowed for a purpose on him who is elected, often against his will, to be the messenger. In these circumstances, experience and talent are irrelevant qualities. Why was it that Moses was chosen to be God's speaker? Pardon me. Simon, it's contagious, your sneeze. He's Moses' speaker because he couldn't speak. For Nahum Sarna, the fact that he couldn't speak, God forced his ability to speak, indicating that it was a miracle. Another medieval commentary highlights the fact that Moses maybe is talking about that when he was younger, he learned High Egyptian and he forgot High Egyptian, and so he doesn't know when he's going to speak when he goes before the prophet and he's shy, before Pharaoh and he's shy. Either way, what we get is Moses is struggling. Moses has some sort of a deficiency. And what happens next? Well, we see Moses expressing fear, self-doubt, wondering if he's even capable. All of us, of course, I believe, have been there and had our own quantity of self-doubt, limiting our ability to even see what we can do because perhaps it has been at times in our life crippling. But a miracle, second miracle comes along. Just when you're having that self-doubt, when you're wondering if you can even do it, maybe because you've had some physical ailment or something, God sends Aaron, his brother. And his brother doesn't even complain. He says, yeah, of course I'll go and be the word of Moses. Of course I'm going to go and speak. And the two of them go off together in a very short verse. And I feel like what we learn here, for me at least, is that yes, we have deficiencies. Absolutely, all of us. When I think of the story in the book of Genesis, in chapter 2, right after God created Adam, Adam expressed how lonely he was. He was unable to function solely and exist in his vacuum of the Garden of Eden, even though he had animals and fun things and all excitement alone. So what does God do? God gives him Eve. It's not intended, I believe, for us to be able to function in this world individualistically. It's what I think we get wrong in our society. I think what we need to recall is that we all have talents and we all have deficiencies. Moses obviously was extremely talented. Not only did he grow up in Pharaoh's palace where he received lots of knowledge, he was able to really become a leader and a strong leader at that and inspire the people to follow him into the desert even though they were complaining against him. Aaron also followed suit and functioned as a support for him. But we see that Moses would not have been as successful had it not been for Aaron. We see that Adam wouldn't have been as successful and been able to even survive had it not been for Eve. And when we think about all of us, in many regards, in some form or fashion, the deficiency that we have is matched by those around us who are able to help us survive, and not only survive, but to thrive. Winston Churchill became able to speak. King George was able to speak. Others of us who have deficiencies find ways to overcome them, whether through technology alone, but more often than not through relationships and through friendships. May we recall, up and against our society that focuses so much on individualism, that it is imperative that we be in positive relationship, because it is in those relationships that our deficiencies can turn around and once again become our sources of strength. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will.